Hello, my fellow bookish people. I'm here today with the wrap-up of Wolf Hall. I don't know if it's a wrap-up. It's me discussing parts 5, 2, and 3, and all of part 6, bringing us to the very end of Wolf Hall, the 2009 Booker-winning novel by Hilary Mantel, all about Thomas Cromwell and his life service to Henry VIII, his battle with Thomas More, which definitely comes to conclusion at the end of this book. Massive spoilers, because I am talking about the very end of the novel. I'm doing all this in conjunction with Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, who's hosting Cromwellathon, and I will definitely put links to his videos and just sort of the general playlist of all the other people who are participating in Cromwellathon. We're finishing up Wolf Hall, and then we're going on to the other novels in the Thomas Cromwell trilogy, the final one, which is going to be published in March. Fingers crossed. I've pre-ordered. So yeah, okay. Let's see if I can keep this into a manageable thing. I really like this novel. I'm going on to the second novel. This is a reread for me. I wasn't impressed with it the first time. I don't think I quite hooked into Thomas Cromwell himself. And I found myself being like, oh, this book is taking Thomas Cromwell's side too much. It's like if history up to a certain point had all taken up Thomas More's side of the argument of him as Thomas More as a guy who's like, I will not sign the oath. I will not agree to the fact that Henry VIII is the head of the church. This just goes against my morals, and I'm going to stand up against that. And that is definitely, he was cast as kind of the hero in a certain people's books. This book definitely I thought went the other way, that, oh, it's casting Thomas Cromwell as the hero. At least that's what I thought on my first read. And I realized maybe how wrong I was. It is a book that is very much telling the story from Thomas Cromwell's point of view. But especially with this latter half, you're getting to see that, yes, Thomas Cromwell thinks he's the hero of this story, or to a certain degree. He thinks he's the hero, as anyone going through their life would think they're the hero. But you now get the sense of Thomas Cromwell as, he's the kind of guy, if you get brought in by the state police of whatever they are, hauled into the tower, and Thomas Cromwell is sitting across from you, you're in trouble. He is the gray functionary. I always think of a Douglas Adams thing where he was talking about some torture, some guy who basically hauled people into the dark dungeons and really did do violence to them. But he would go home at the end of the day, and he would sit in his lovely house, and his loving child would come up to him, and the loving child would be like, "Oh, Daddy, what did you do today?" And Daddy would look down on his child and say, "I fulfilled my functions as a officer of the state," or something equally as chilling. And that is indeed the kind of the sense you get with Wolf Hall. Thomas Cromwell is someone who, if you're in his group, if you're in his pack, he will protect you for the most part. He will cherish you. He also has an incredibly strong personality, and sometimes he verbally can knock someone down as much as his father at the very beginning of this novel knocks people down physically. He is able to shape people. He's just got that power to do it, and he's not even really aware maybe that he is that powerful of a personality. There's people around him who definitely say, it's like, oh God, you're going to convince me, and it's like I'm getting mugged on the street. I'm getting booted on the street. And Thomas Cromwell doesn't quite see it that way. It's good. He is an unreliable narrator in that sense of he doesn't quite understand how people view him. He's even Gregory, the son that loves him the most, says, "You're surprised that you don't know that you look like a murderer, because you sure do look like a murderer to everyone else." It's like, that's his son, who he loves the most, that he cherishes the most, that he's probably the most tender with. But that sort of thing. This probably goes to the whole thing of Wolf Hall. Wolf Hall is Wolf WULF Hall of the Seymours, but it is also, this world is Wolf Hall. This is Homo homini lupus. Man is wolf to man, or man is no man but a wolf to a stranger. It is the thing of your, if it's an outsider, you feel perfectly fine being bestial towards them. This is of course, as said, is like, animals actually are, the wolf itself is actually an extremely communal animal. Though actually I think that applies to human beings as well. They're extremely communal, but when there's an outsider, when there's something they're hunting, they are savage and they rip them apart. And you see that very much in Cromwell's dealings. You also see it in Thomas More. Actually, Thomas More's things, even though Thomas More, at least in his novel, portrayed through Cromwell's eyes, is a much colder figure. But there is a very striking scene at the end where Thomas More is going to be executed, and this young boy comes to Cromwell, Dick Purser, whose father had been done to death by More for his religious things, and More took this kid in, but the kid Dick says, "Oh well, the sacrament is just a piece of bread. It's just a piece of bread." And so he gets pulled out, and he gets whipped, and and the boy says, "It's like, that wasn't the big deal. It's like, I'm sure we've all been beaten, as gotten such a good beating from our fathers," which Cromwell, as you know from the start of this book, can heartily agree with. It was the fact that More brought him out in front of the entire family, and that the women, the girls, were laughing at him as he was being whipped naked. Cromwell kind of reflects, like, in a different type of story, it would be the innocent maid who would interpose themselves and say, "Oh, you shouldn't be so beastly, you shouldn't be so savage to someone." It's like, but no, this is Wolf Hall, where they laugh and they make fun and they humiliate this kid. And there's a scene where Cromwell comforts this kid, and the kid bawls, just cries, lets out kind of all that hurt. And he says at the end, like, "I will follow you to death, to the death," to Cromwell. It's like they are members of the same pack. And this mini drama here, especially at the end, because a lot of the stuff with Anne Boleyn sort of falls to one side, even though Anne Boleyn has obviously not been able to produce a male heir, and that is going to come up for going to Wolf Hall at the end in Jane Seymour. This seems to be the echo throughout the novel of, you have what had been this very odd world. This world, I've been reading Darmid McCulloch, and he makes the point that the Catholic Church and having the unified Christianity for such a long time was an oddity. That actually what was more regular was having all like little weird divisions, everyone worshiping something else. This was a bizarre period of giant unity for good and for ill. But now we're getting into basically the birth of the modern. There's reference to Copernicus, Father Copernicus, in here, and it's not geocentric world, it's heliocentric world. That we're getting into the Reformation, where we're divided, we're splitting the church. There's the great schism of the church is happening, and on one side we have the people who are going, the Bible. The Reformation, the Protestants going, it's the Bible. We have to go back to the Bible, versus the Catholic, the Roman Catholic, what becomes the Roman Catholics, saying, no, it's all this old tradition of 1,000 years, which Cromwell's like, well, a lie is still a lie, even if it's 1,000 years old, and we need the truth, the gospel, the truth. And you get the Gutenberg revolution in here as well, which is probably a part of this printed word, which is what makes the Reformation possible. We're having all these kind of these divisions, and this is even before kind of our modern idea of nationality, of dividing everyone up into different countries, of the pacts. It's like this is the start of the fragmentation that creates the state of what our modern world is. And wolves we suddenly we have the wolves amongst us in the country. I mean, not that we didn't before, but we have it to such a degree that you have someone like More on one side and Cromwell on the other, where I think they make a reference to Moore's dictionary versus our dictionary. It's like they are speaking words that have different definitions now. They are speaking at cross purposes. There's a whole thing in this book of words, just words, which resonates through this whole section. We have Cromwell, the crafter of words. And I mean, he talks about the height of language is to be able to write stuff into law. When you're writing laws, you are testing words to find their utmost power. Like spells, they have to make things happen in the real world. And like spells, they only work if people believe in them. He is a Bible man. He is like the words of the Bible are so important to him. Why I think people of the on the Reformation evangelical side were so much against the withholding of the Bible. It's like you cannot tell people just part of the tale and then stop, or just tell them parts you choose. They have seen their religion painted on the walls of churches or carved in stone, but now God's pen is poised and he is ready to write his words in the books of their hearts. We get this oath that he creates, which is indeed his way of basically, it is his axe that he uses to, in the end, chop off Thomas More's head. Words are weapons. Words are the ideas, that great, powerful, disruptive ideas that are going to that pull apart the church, from Martin Luther, from Tyndale's Bible. It's like, and it's on More's side. More is obviously a great wielder of words, and Cromwell is kind of frustrated because More has cast himself as a victim. Cromwell feels like he is being manipulated into being the fool, the oppressor in this story, when he doesn't view himself that way, but it's very frustrating to him. More is a really difficult, complicated guy, but he's not all wrong. He's not all wrong in this situation either. But yeah, the Cromwell is continually going words, just words, and you have to think that is such an ironic thing coming from a guy who's a crafter of words, who has used words to vanquish his enemy. And I mean, Dick Purse at the beginning of this thing, you got to feel is almost like it's a stand-in for the young Cromwell getting beaten by his father at the beginning of this, and at the end, he is executing an oppressor, what he views as an oppressor. But there's enough shading in there that you're also wondering if he's becoming more and more like his father, but on a much larger and more dangerous scope. There's also there's so many things in this book. There's Cromwell and memory. The memory machine comes into this book. So much of this book is Cromwell kind of wrestling with his memory, of being haunted by his memory, and his fascination with Giulio Camillo and his memory machine, which he is apparently in Paris making for the king of France. It's this, there's a question of like, is it memory? It's holding all the kind of knowledge of humankind, but it's also like, is it a soul? Is it a printing press that writes its own books, which you have to think in with the Gutenberg revolution, that in a sense that the Gutenberg revolution, the printing press, it was invented and it started printing Bibles of its own volition from this society, causing the Reformation. There's the medium is the message, to get a little Canadian content in there. But there's also, it's like, Cromwell wonders, like, is it a mind that thinks about itself? And it's like, it's kind of calls into question, it's like how much Cromwell is self-reflective, how much he can see himself. I talk about him holding up a mirror to Thomas More to show a vain and capricious and kind of callous man, and then flashing it to himself and seeing a killer, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to flash away from that. It's like, can Cromwell see himself? And And he gets annoyed with someone who's talking about kind of like, oh, fates, and it's like, it's not the stars that made us, Dr. Butts. It is the circumstances and necessita, the choices we make under pressure. Our virtues make us, but virtues are not enough. We must deploy our vices at times. Or don't you agree? Which is like, it's the perfect villain line. Like, if this came from a Bond villain, in a way, I could see it there, but this is, of course, much more nuanced than that. It's like Cromwell isn't a Bond villain. He isn't the superhero, great guy, but he's also not like absolute black evil, or at least if he is black evil, he's as black evil as Thomas More. Neither of which are fellows that I would want to find myself in a room with, having to answer the questions, because they would rip me apart. Cromwell maybe would rip me apart on a much more word level, though it would end up, after Thomas More's torture level, they would both end up with probably me getting burned or axed or whatever would happen to atheists at that time. So yes, that is the end. That is the end, and we're moving to the literal Wolf Hall, which you have to say with Cromwell. Cromwell, I think, running in the background is he's always looking for his B plan. And Anne Boleyn, you're A plan, and you're not working out, and we're going to go to B plan. So yes, we finish Wolf Hall, and we'll go on to Bring Up the Bodies. This is my very battered copy of it. If you check out Jason's announcement video, he's got sort of the schedule of how much we'll be reading each chunk for the month of February, and we'll head on to the third and final book, The Mirror and the Light. Did I get it right? Who knows? I will finally get it right at some point, probably while I'm reading it. All right, more videos later.